Hey, all you rad dads out there.
Jaret, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. I'm thinking we should get started,
Yes,
and
let's
maybe
do.
yeah, and maybe we can get started just by having you tell people who are listening or watching who you are.
All right. Cool. Well, hey guys, I'm Jarrett. I'm in the band Bowling for Soup. We're coming up on 28 years. Um, I do that has led me in a lot of different directions as far as entertainment and creative things are concerned, from video directing to um, writing, producing for other bands, for different TV shows and things like that. And I have several music side projects. In fact, I have a new country record coming out
Right.
here in just a couple of weeks. But I also was an actor as a kid, and so I am a voice actor. So I play Chuck E. Cheese here in America, and most of our dads will know what
Oh
that
yeah,
is.
we've got
And
Chuck E. Cheese here too.
Okay, and I was on the show Phineas and Ferb for all 9 years, and did the theme song for that, and
Right.
so just I learned very early, and I was taught by my manager is a really good. Um, he just has a really good insight into things, and early on he said to me, as Bowling for Soup, we kind of had our hits, and it's like, okay, how are we going to sustain income and things like that. And he was like, man, you just, if in this industry, you're not going to be able to find one thing that makes you the kind of living that you want to make, and, be able to provide for your family and things. But if you could find 10 things that make you this amount of money, then, you could do that. And so it's always been my mindset. So, because of that, I stay very, very busy, and often too busy. I think sometimes even my hardcore fans are just like, okay, what is happening now? You're doing what? But
I
it all works out, and it keeps me out of trouble.
Yeah, I can't believe it. Like I follow you on Instagram and stuff, and like you just are so busy. Like so you didn't even mention you have a couple podcasts
Yeah, that's
as
right.
well.
You're right. I didn't, and that's how we met, right? So,
Yeah.
yes, I have. My original podcast is called Jarrett Goes to the Movies. We've been almost 300 episodes,
Awesome.
and that's weekly. And then we have the Rockstar Dad Show, which I'm pretty sure probably started about like your podcast did. My drummer Gary and myself standing in a pool drinking a beer, and we realized that all we ever talk about is kids.
Yep.
And I was just like, this is content here, and we have so many friends that are dads, and our niche is that we get rock stars, comedians, actors, also just dads from around the neighborhood. But for the most part, it's guys that are in the entertainment industry
Yep.
who get interviewed a lot, but don't really get asked about, what your time at home is like. What do you do with your kids? And that's what all dads want to talk about,
People
is
love
their
talking
kids.
about their kids.
They do. And so, but again, it's one of those things where people, I think, just because of our career choice, I think human nature is to ask about the things that just they kind of can't believe.
Right.
Like, so it's just like, wait, how was China, or how was this, and yada yada, or you met this guy,
How
and
was recording with so and so? Yeah.
right, exactly, and
Yeah.
that, again, that's sort of what I call Thanksgiving talk, right? It's like, you're at when I'm at Thanksgiving, I have to like go, hey, there's other people sitting here, like I don't, I'm not gonna field all the questions about what my last trip, and so yeah, and it's just worked really great. I mean, we've been doing it several years now, and it's even as far as like parenting and things like that. Both Gary and I are very, uh, we're very, very good dads, if I do say so myself. We're very hands on, and very much like in the trenches, and always been, and understand, how important our wives are, and all of that. And so, yeah, I mean, that's basically how that show came about. And then I've got a couple of more that I'm actually starting soon, but they're less like weekly episodes, because it is a lot to do, but more series based things. But yeah, it's like I said, or as you said, I tend to always be up to something.
Well, I like that comment that you made, like, we're doing it and we're involved dads and we're good dads.
Yeah,
So, rad dads. So do you consider
yeah,
yourself a rad dad?
for sure. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, I'm not sure. You probably make this joke all the time, but not sure how rad my kids think I am all the
Right.
time. But it's funny. The older that my kids are 19, 16, and 9.
Yep.
And both of my boys, 9 and 16, have kind of always thought I was the coolest thing ever. But my daughter, kind of just could sort of take it or leave, because it's just been her whole life, and she doesn't ever lead with like, oh yeah, my dad's this guy. But she's to that age now where she starts a new job and her manager is like, oh my god, like your last name's Reddick. Are you related to this guy? And
Yeah.
so she texts me a lot and says, hey, this guy really likes this song that you do and stuff. And so I think I'm turning the rad corner there as well.
Yeah. Well, there's kind of a couple ways to look at it, right? We talk about this a lot on the show too. You're right. That comment comes up a fair bit. Like, I'm not sure how
Right?
rad my kids think I am, but I guess that definition of what's a rad dad,
Yeah.
there's a couple things you said just now. So one is, oh, my dad's in a band, right?
Yeah.
He's like, famous guy,
Yeah.
goes on tour, and that's pretty rad. But you also kind of said a good dad, right? And
Yeah.
so maybe it's both those things. So to you, what
Yeah.
makes a rad dad?
Well, I guess probably I see where you're heading with that, and that's the same thing that we do with the Rockstar Dad thing. It sounds like we're very similar in that area, in that there's a lot of dads that are that aren't necessarily rock star dads out there in the world.
Yeah, you kind of have the same thing. Like, what does it mean to be a rock star dad? Is it just a
Yeah,
dad who's a rock star, or are you a rock star at being a dad? Yeah.
exactly right. Yeah, I had this idea for a book, and I think Rhett Miller stole it from me, but yeah, it was my the whole idea would be like my dad's a rock star, but the stuff that you're talking about is like him helping with the dishes and making sure you make it to practice on time, and
Yeah.
being there to help you when with something when you need it, or fix your TV, or whatever it is. Yeah, I mean, rock star dads, you put in the time, just like you are to be a rad dad, I'm sure. And so I think we're talking the same talk here, man. Yeah, I mean, a rock star dad is someone who's present, most of all, available,
Yep.
um, but also, and who can be a friend, but knows that you're not there to just be their best friend.
Right.
And that's super important, I think. And
That's hard though
it,
too.
it's complicated. That is a very
Mhm.
it's a complicated, what do they say, stream to navigate or whatever. I mean, because you want to be awesome, you want to be their best friend, but at the same time you have to make sure that you're instilling those things that they're going to need in life to be able to even survive out there. And more, we're coddling kids and trying to keep
Yeah.
them away from so much. We become like hand sanitizer, right? We protect them so much
Yep.
that that then when they go into the real world, they've washed their hands too much, and now they get sick all the time. Um, I don't know if that analogy worked or not, but
Yeah, no, I think that totally, I actually really like that
yeah,
analogy,
yeah,
right? It's like you protect them so much, you keep them
yeah,
safe from so much. This comes up a lot actually, like,
yeah.
people thinking back to when they were kids, and
Hmm.
like, oh yeah, my parents would just send me out to, like,
Yeah,
play at 10 in the morning, and yeah, come back at dark, and
yeah,
whatever you got into in the meantime, like, whatever. But now it's kind of like, parents helicoptering all over, which I think, there's probably a balance there.
yeah. I,
There
I
is.
agree with you. I think, yeah, and you're right. The thing is too is that you kind of just can't do that anymore because of
Yeah.
it's just a different world we live in, or at least we're educated in a different way because we have access to so much information. I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe it was way more dangerous for us to be out and about when we were kids than it is for them now. But we have the technology now to know that, like, hey, this is not really a good thing to do, or to a safe place, or this. but yeah, you're right. I mean, you know, uh, that's the good part about living where I live. I mean, we live in the suburbs of Dallas,
Yeah.
where we live, it's pretty darn safe, and so our kid can just go out and play. He's 9, but we track him. He's got an Apple Watch. We know where he is at all
Yeah,
times.
there you go.
We can call him on that thing, and it's he has to. They don't. All the parents around here have kind of the same rules. That we just enacted the no backyard rules
Oh,
real recently, actually, because the kids got into a little bit of trouble somewhere. But that's the thing. Another whole thing, right, is like my parents would send me out, but they didn't communicate with any of my friends' parents.
right.
Like that was, and now we have group threads and group chats and all this stuff to
Yeah.
where it's like they can't get away with anything anymore.
Yeah, it's amazing. But there's also that like cool community aspect too. Like not
Sure.
just like, I guess monitoring what the kids are doing, but establishing community between the parents too.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Right.
mean,
Which is kind of neat.
definitely. It's funny. It's to be able to have that sort of thing. That kind of gets complicated because I mean I've lived in 3 or 4 places since I've been a dad, um, and it's like I've lived where like my neighbors are also my buddies, and so it kind of all goes hand in hand. And then I've lived in situations where I know my neighbors, but they're not necessarily who I hang out with, and that's kind of the
Yep.
situation now. So it's like that's kind of all we talk about is that, or a basketball goal fell in the street. We need to get a new one or whatever it is. I don't know,
Yep.
but that there's it just sort of depends on who your neighbors are. But what I'm saying is that like in my last neighborhood, like the same parents of the kids that my kids played with were the same dads that I was having a beer with, and
Yeah.
now
That's cool.
now the dads that I have beers with sort of live in a different area. Um,
Okay.
but we have a golf cart, so we just go over there.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. So how has this changed over time? You have you said 19-year-old, right?
Yep, yep,
And then you've got 9-year-old.
yep. And
And so how
16.
yeah, and 16. So how has that kind of journey changed over time as a dad? Like I guess maybe one of the biggest factors in addition
Mhm.
to the kids' ages and them kind of growing and changing and their needs changing, but is your career. Like
Yeah.
where exactly what was happening when you became a dad for the first time? What was happening in your life?
Yeah, so I was married to my ex at the time, and frankly, I had just sort of tasted the first bit of success whenever we got pregnant with Emma. Up until then, I was just a guy that was out there struggling and trying to do it, and was homeless for a couple of years actually until I met my
Oh wow.
ex, and she was the breadwinner um, for several years. And so, when we had Emma, a lot changed really quickly for me. We got nominated
Yeah.
for a Grammy the day she was born.
Whoa.
Um, and then Girl the Bad Guys Want became a hit. So I was having to juggle this like, okay, you sort of have this in front of you. You can go after it, but you're also a dad. Um, so I missed a lot of time at home, but I also missed a lot of opportunity. I think
Yeah.
a lot of times guys in my position go all or nothing, like they're like, you know what, we got to strike while the fire is hot. I can't turn down this trip to Spain, and I can't do this, and I got to go out on the road for 6-8 weeks at a time. um, and really at the time of our height of our when we were doing this and getting very very popular, I just couldn't commit to that. I was gone more probably than I should have, but I wasn't gone near as much as I could have been.
Yeah.
And for that, um, I think that we probably would have been even more popular of a band, especially in other territories, if I had been able to commit to that. But I just didn't want to miss anything. I didn't. I never missed a dance recital. I never missed a birthday. I never missed a game, any game that I could possibly make. I would be there. And that was what was important to me. But that as that sort of progressed or whatever, I will say, I was busy enough to where it kind of it caused a wedge between myself and my ex, and that eventually would be the what ended our marriage most of all was just that we had grown apart because of the time that I had
Yeah.
spent on the road and stuff. But and that's the way that it happens. That's the way that it is. It could have been a lot worse. I could have just left them there, and I couldn't do that. So, and so the things that have changed the most is that as I've gotten to be as the children have gotten to be older, as I had my 9-year old, I was more successful as far as being able to navigate how long I'm gone, and so now I could make my own choices after we
Yeah,
had the
calling the
hits.
shots a little bit,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah, all the hits happened between 2003 and 2007. So that's, you got to think. So that's my daughter turning, pretty much my daughter getting to be like 5 years old and my oldest son being born. And so that was the busiest time ever. And, obviously, again, like I said, that probably, my marriage falling apart and that. Um,
Yeah, that doesn't help, right?
no, but since then, since those days, it's we're still successful enough to where I could say, hey, you know what? I'll go out on the road for 2 weeks, but then I want to come home for a month,
Yeah.
and we've been able to maintain that. And now my drummer has a 10-year-old, so for the last 10 years, we've really operated under that pretty much since I had my 9-year-old and he had Tyler. We've really stuck to that. Like we're never gone more than 10 days. 2 weeks is the absolute max, and then we're
Right.
home for quite some time. So that's a big change. And then also just the world. I mean, technology. It's so much easier. When I'm talking to dudes on the road now that are dads because they can FaceTime their kids.
Yeah.
We had a guy that was opening up for us that he would still go onto the bus and read to his kids every single night
Oh, that's
at the
cool.
same time to do the bedtime story or whatever, and that was their thing. And Gary's kid calls him about stuff all the time, and my son texts me constantly about the Steelers because we're Steelers fans, and
Yep.
my youngest son can call me when he can't figure out how to get Alexa to turn on something or whatever, and so
Yeah, you have
that's
to
been.
spell it because she'll respond in the
Oh yeah,
background,
because
right?
she's all over this house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too, right here.
Yeah. And that and then finally I realize this is a long-winded answer, but the world is smaller.
Yep.
It's so much easier to get from place to place than it was even in 2003 when Emma was born, just because of computers and communication and all of that. So, we were still map questing, I think, back then. We didn't have
Yep.
navigation or anything like that. You couldn't book to book a flight was a whole thing. You couldn't just get on your phone and just be like, you know what, I think
Yeah,
I'm
in
going to
two
go home
minutes.
a day early. You couldn't do that. So, um, technology has been a big benefit, I think, to fatherhood as well.
Yeah, things you have to navigate as a parent though too, like with technology, right? Like, so I have littler kids, so 3 and 6 years old. So we
Mm-hmm.
haven't really gotten there yet, but I'm kind of curious what your experience is there with um maybe cell phones and how you guys kind of handle that kind of stuff, screen time and
Yeah, man,
whatever.
it's an ongoing battle. I mean, when you have your first kid, um, because it's changing so much. It's like when we had Emma, it was 2003, and it just like, yeah, well, we're not gonna just put her in front of the TV, and we managed to do that. She
Hmm.
really just didn't get a lot of screen time for a long time, and then until really she could ask for a movie, and this and my my oldest son really never got into TV and things like that. It was really once like the iPad became a thing. He was 5 or 6 years old, I think, when the iPad first came out.
Yep.
Um, but still, it was very easy to monitor because it wasn't something that they could use in every aspect of their life yet.
Right.
Now it's very difficult, especially the phone. Now my wife is really good with the 9-year old with Everett about when she can just tell, like, man, he's had too much screen time. Like, you can just sense it in his attitude and just how tired he is and all of that. And she has no qualms about just taking the thing away for a week and going, hey, you're not in trouble, you need a break,
Yeah.
and she just did that while I was on tour. um
Well, they kind of,
so
yeah, man, they start to
yeah,
like zone out and then
Yeah.
you get this behavior stuff too, right? And they
Right.
don't sleep as well. So yeah, you got to pick up on that.
It's tough, man. And then the whole like social media thing is so
Yeah.
difficult, and it was very hard. Everett's not in any of that yet, but it was so very difficult for us because we were a divided home, and they were here.
Yeah.
The two older kids were here every other week, and so um, it really came down to a lot of trust,
Yeah.
a lot of communication about it, and then as far as video games with Jack, he was the exact age of the Fortnite craze. So
Oh yeah. Yeah.
because that's he's 16 now, so I guess that happened when he was like 12, 13. And I mean, he would go weeks, without. I mean, that's all he wanted to do. He wasn't going outside anymore, and so that's where you really gotta step in and do stuff. But I don't know. We've never really been the type to like take their phones and like look at their messages and things like
Yeah.
that. Just because, and I'll tell you the real reason is because, and I think that some people should do that. By the way, I'm not saying that I don't think that our method is right, but I can tell you that our reasoning is that there had to be at least some sort of trust because they can hide anything they want. I mean, if
Mm-hmm.
if you can't like we as parents don't really even know they've got these like secret texting apps. They've got ways of
Yeah.
like hiding it on their phone, and all of it's completely legal. And they all know what it is, and they figure out all the workarounds and all of that. And so it wasn't long after Instagram came out where it's like my daughter would slip up and go my private Instagram account or whatever, and be like, oh yeah, well I'm gonna go ahead and follow that one too,
Yeah.
and so but as far as just taking up their things and reading through their business and stuff like that, it's a hard it's if they're not getting in trouble, it's just I just don't we never have done that.
Yeah, it's an impossible balance to achieve, I think. Like you got to figure out what works for your family, which is kind of what you said. Like that's what
Yeah,
works for you
totally.
guys.
Yeah,
I guess if like you had some indication there was something to worry about, it would be different, right? And
100%.
so
Yeah,
you still have to be mindful of it. And I think for like the entirety of history, kids have been ahead of their parents. They've been able to hide things from their parents and have their own private stuff going on. And so yeah, we need to be, I think,
100%.
respectful of that and understanding of that too. But yeah, to a certain level, that's
It's
tough.
like a little prison system, like they have access to anything and everything they want. You know, we've got to be good, corrections officers and try to be a deterrent.
Yeah.
But the fact is that if they want something, they can absolutely get it. I mean,
Yep.
it's just that maybe that joke doesn't fly in Canada, but like here in America, our prison systems, like they can literally get anything. Like
Yeah.
they have anything they want. And all of them have cell phones now. They're not supposed to. It's crazy. But yeah, that's the thing, right? Is like, and again, communication is just discussing
Yeah.
things like relationships uh, and just making sure that they know that you're always here, and that they're going to make mistakes, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Mistakes is really how you learn.
Yeah.
Um,
And you kind of mentioned communication too, like between in the situations where kids are splitting their time between mom and dad, and how important that communication is. Like, you have any thoughts on that and the things that have worked for you there? We have, lots of listeners and,
yeah,
in that same situation, and that's a really tough one.
man, I'll tell you, I read about this on Punk Rock Dads on Facebook all the time,
Yeah.
and I wish I could pull every single dad aside and just you know try and talk through it. There is no right answer, and it's hard. I mean, it's my older kids now, like I said, are 19 and 16, and as far as the 19-year-old goes, I mean, it's just paying for school, and that money is sort of set aside, and the mom is managing it, and so there's not really anything going on there. But we just had to go through the buying my son a car together,
Oh yeah.
and so I will say that navigating things when they're little, um, when you still have the remnants and shrapnel of the relationship left, and those signs, and especially when you both start to get into other things, and you also, it just depends on the personality of my ex is a very, very strong personality, and it's sort of like all or nothing, and so we had some difficult times. I'm a pretty laid back dude. But it wasn't always easy, but it was, it's manageable. But I would say that I honestly believe that every dad who goes through a divorce and there's a custody situation should go to therapy, and it's pot and I really do, and I think that it's not a horrible idea to just go, even with your kids, even if there's not a problem. Just go, and just make
Yep.
sure everything's getting talked through and talked about, and you're understanding, how those things go. Because trying to navigate that and figure that out on your own with little kids, and with your former partner who you're not agreeing on anything, which obviously is why you're
Yeah.
divorced. And so now you've got money to talk about with child support, and then you've got this, which is above and beyond child support, and then you bring the next partners into it or whatever, and that
Yeah.
complicates things even more, because
Yeah.
it's like, well, why are we doing this, and what's going on with this. And so the more I read, like I said, on like punk rock dads and stuff like that, man, just the more you just want to kind of just give them a side hug and be like, man, I promise you, dude, put the kids first,
Yeah.
hang on for dear life,
Yeah.
and just get through it. So many times I'm just I find myself writing on there to those guys, just going, listen, be the bigger man, take the high road, never say anything about the other side that you
Yep.
that you wouldn't say right there in front of your kids, when y'all were still together or whatever. Just don't say anything. If you can't say anything positive, don't say anything. And it doesn't matter if they're getting it on the other side, because eventually it all just floats to the top, and they will be like, oh, okay, well, so this is going on, or this was going on. And it's hard, man.
I mean, yeah, like shout out to Punk Rock Dad's Facebook group. You and I are both on there, and
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
totally.
yeah, yeah. I mean, in sometimes you have to hold your tongue on there too, because
You do.
there's
Yeah,
some, yeah, there's some interesting conversation. But yeah, it's good for the most part. But as a parent, like, I think this is, you know, you're always dealing with how you take your emotions out of things too, right? And not reacting solely based on your emotions. And then you add a kind of a stressful situation like that, and it's
yeah.
like, it's so difficult in the day to day. It's difficult
Yes.
as a parent to take those emotions out. But
It is,
yeah,
and then there's just the thing of you find yourself in a situation where you don't have that time anymore, so you become even
yeah,
more resentful. It's just it's just not the easiest thing in the world to go through, and I think it, it's guys got to just see the bigger picture of things, and it's like, look, you're raising kids, but it's 18 years. And honestly, once they get 14 or 15, you're kind of, for the most part, most of your job is done. You're there for guidance and stuff, but they're sort of starting to make their own decisions and charting their own course. And like I said, my
yeah.
son just turned 16 last week. He's got a car now. So my wife was like, is Jack coming home this week? And I'm like, hell if I know. I don't know. I mean, he could say he is, but
Yeah, that's a
who
big
knows?
milestone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, but, I always put it into the perspective, and this is what I told him, last week when we were taking our final drives to school. I was just like, look, I get it, man. I was in a band with adults when I was 13, and I couldn't, I was never home, and I get that. I get
Yeah.
that you're going to be busy, and I get that you want to see your friends, and so just call your dad every once in a while, come home for dinner
Yeah.
every so often, and you know, and I'll be fine.
I loved your post on Facebook about that last day of driving him to school. That
Yeah,
was really cool, because that is a thing that I think too often as parents, like, and it happens all the time actually. That's a really big one, but like, it happens all the
yeah,
time. And it got me thinking about, like, even my daughter, her, you know, she would come home from like grade 1,
yeah,
and she'd be telling me about stuff that happened, or things that she learned about that she didn't experience with me. Because
right,
everything prior to that point was like, I knew
yeah,
everything that was going on.
Yeah.
And now you're just starting to have like your own life and your own thoughts. And it is, yeah, I really like that post.
My wife talks about that a lot, about how he just has this whole other life. Everett
It's so
has
weird.
this whole other world at school that what we know about it is what he tells us and what we hear from his teachers or whatever, which really that's just the top of it.
Yeah.
But here he is, he's navigating the politics of riding the bus home, and you know, it just there's just so much, and you're just like, gosh, those are elements. That's a really good point, because she was just talking about this the other day about how there's just aspects of that we literally know nothing about. Like we
Yeah.
don't know, who does he talk to, and we ask him, but you don't, it's that's one of the big things that I learned, psychological wise, is like, you're not supposed to bombard them with questions like right when they get home. You're
Yeah.
supposed to wait it out, because they need to decompress, and it's not unlike me coming off the road and then instantly everybody going, well, tell me about the tour, yada
Yeah.
yada. And you're just like, can we just talk about something else? They need to decompress. And so my drummer actually has a method that he uses that I think is just amazing. But he won't ask his kid about anything until they're like playing catch, or they're on a drive somewhere that isn't school or something, to where the kid's
Yeah.
focused on something else, and then they have pretty good communication there.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's for sure. I'd heard that as well. Because that was really frustrating for us. Because you're so, you want to control everything as a parent. So you
100%.
kind of have this tendency to want to do that. But yeah, my daughter's coming home from school and you're like, oh, how was school?
Yeah.
What happened at school today? Nothing. I don't know.
Nothing. Yeah.
Like, and then you get these stories later, like, oh, so-and-so punched somebody, out on the field,
Right.
or like, why didn't you
Yeah.
tell me that earlier? But I think you're
Exactly.
right. They need time to kind of process their feelings and emotions too. So
And they're tired, and they're wanting to
yeah.
move on to something else, and they just need that space. I think that's really why, like in generations before us, the dinner table has been so important.
Yeah.
That dinner conversations. I realize that, and it's almost impossible for us, in my family, because my youngest has karate and drums,
Hmm.
piano, baseball, soccer, all this stuff. And of course, my work hours, I try to be done by 4 or 5 each day, but sometimes I'm not done till 6:30. And so it's hard for families to sit down and have dinner. But I think that was a big thing back, and in that generation of, like, where everybody could talk about their day, and
Yeah.
you weren't allowed to talk about television or whatever.
Yeah. I think,
um,
and it's not every family can do that too,
no,
but
it's hard.
and I think you're right. It is harder now, I think, than it probably ever was. There's less 9 to 5, and there's just more stuff going on in everybody's lives.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a fantastic point. So many people work from home, and so it's
mhm.
it's used to, you would sit down to dinner after dad had been home for 30 minutes or whatever, and
Yeah.
but yeah, I think a lot of people do good on that. I made a joke. I don't know if you watch the show Ozark, but
No, not yet, but
yeah. Well,
my
anybody who listens to this podcast will know that Marty Bird and his family can fly to Mexico and get and watch somebody get shot in the head, and take down a drug cartel and steal a bunch of money and put it in a hotel vault, and then dig up a body and move it, but they're still home for dinner every single night. Sit down at that table for dinner.
yeah, priorities.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you being kind of so open too about your experience kind of co-parenting.
Yeah, man.
I think that's important. And you've been pretty open. I've read some articles and stuff about your experience with mental health kind
Yeah.
of struggles. That's something that's really important for us
Yeah.
in Rad Dads to talk about and kind of bring to the forefront. I think it's important for dads in general to talk about, because I think
Yeah.
some of us aren't that good at it,
Right.
myself included. So can you tell me a little bit more about how you felt like,
Mm.
I guess, therapy was helpful for you, and why you would recommend that, yeah, for dads
Yeah.
out there?
It's funny is that my wife and I actually do counseling, and we love it. I mean, it's to us, it's like, um, like oil change, like you're just kind of
Oh, I
tune
like
up.
that.
We just decided, we wanted to work on some aspects of communication. Um, but one of the things is that our therapist, not giving me an out, but sometimes in talking to her, will say, he is a man. They are wired to do this. We are not. It's not. Most of us don't like talking about our feelings, and so that's a pretty easy way to look at it. But if you go back to how we were brought up and how
Yeah.
you're supposed to go to work and come home and provide for the family, and that's what you're supposed to do, and we're still just sort of like that, in that, like, we don't talk about our problems, or we don't talk about our feelings. And I'm a musician and an artist, so I will say that I do have a bit of an advantage in that my friends and I will kind of talk about that stuff. And I don't know if it's just, if we're just wired differently or whatever, but I will talk about kind of things like that to my friends, but I'm not amazingly open, even as a husband. Sometimes, I have a
Yeah.
tendency to really let things build up. Um, but back to your, the me sort of figuring it out. That time in my life when I was going through a divorce, 2-year custody battle, getting into a new relationship, moving to a new city, having a new son, trying to decide what I was going to do. There was a chance that I was going to dissolve Bowling for Soup, and actually started going down that path. And so many things like that happened to me, kind of all over the, well, not to me, but in my life over a course of a couple years. And, you know, I finally just had to just talk to my doctor about it. I didn't. I mean, I found myself some days where I could get up, get the kids to school, feed the dogs, and I'd go right back to bed, be in the fetal position until I had another sort of responsibility. But work stopped, and
Yeah.
I would go out and play the shows that I had to. But I was just, I just I couldn't be productive. I couldn't be optimistic. I was just in a really bad place. And I honestly didn't know much about depression. I think most people think about depression and they just think, oh, that just means you're sad,
Yeah.
and that's not anywhere close to what it is. And I certainly didn't know anything about anxiety because I had never experienced it, other than the way that I explain it is like when your dad is still paying your car insurance and you're going 80 miles an hour down a street and you pass a cop, and
Hmm.
like what that feeling in your stomach is, but all the time,
Yeah.
and that's sort of how I explain anxiety anyway. Um, and so, yeah, I started to feel that, and I was sort of spiraling a bit, and I started to try to get on medication. And then my wife, was pretty adamant about me going to see a counselor, and I didn't want to, because boys are scared to go to counseling. I had been to marriage counseling in my previous relationship and loved it. Like and then I ended up staying and going to just counseling with that same lady. I loved it so much, but then just all once I was out of it, I was scared to go back. And
Yeah.
we're weird about it. Man, it's just so great because you get just to talk things out that you don't really even know are weighing on you, because once you get going, you're just going, and then you have somebody that listens from not a non-judgmental way, but somebody to listen and tell you, hey, it's okay that you feel like this, and these are real feelings, and
Hmm.
there's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with thinking this, even though you think this is bad. This is natural, or this is why this is like this, or this is what you need to work on, or you need more time to yourself, or whatever. Um, and so, yeah, therapy, medication was another thing I did not want to do. I am. My wife says I punish myself. Like if I have a cold, I won't take anything because I'm just
Yeah.
like, I don't know. And she's just like, okay, you're just gonna sit there and be miserable. That's fine. And I'm just sort of like that. I've always been like that with medication. My parents were both alcoholics. My brother's a drug addict, and so that could be part of it, of just kind
Mm.
of not wanting to just to medicate. I mean, I drink, but that's medicine, drugs, things like that have always been weird for me.
Yeah. Interesting.
Uh, but yeah, but like I said, I talked to my doctor, and it took me about 18 months to get the right medication. I went through
Yeah.
all of them. It is, and the way that he would explain it to me, and this is, I'm glad you asked me this. I know my answer is long, but I want to get this point across.
No, it's great.
Um, there's not a magic pill. So you don't just go there. And this is the thing that I think also frustrates men, especially. Um, you think you're going to go there and they're just going to give you this pill and it's
Hmm.
going to be okay. Well, it might, but
Hmm.
chances are it probably will make you feel a certain way. And maybe you don't want to feel that way, or it might not work at all. Or it might be that you need to add something else to it. Like I said, 18 months to 2 years is what it took to get mine right. And then once it was right, it was just, there it is. And so I now see a psychiatrist. So I don't go to a therapist anymore. Um, I probably need to, but, right now we're doing this counseling thing and I'm getting enough of that. Our couples counselor sort of drags shit out of me all the time that I'm just like, wait a minute, I didn't even know that was bothering me, you know? And so I'm like, I feel like I'm
Yeah.
already getting a 2 for 1. Um, but I see a psychiatrist now who just monitors my medications.
Yeah.
And so I feel really good about that because that's what he does.
Yeah.
And, I talked to my actual physician about it. And that's where you start, for
Yeah.
anybody that's you don't know where to start with your doctor and just be super super honest.
Well, it's
And
amazing. It's kind of funny. I don't know if I've ever really mentioned this on the show, so I don't know if people know this, but my day job is actually as a pharmacist.
oh, okay.
Um, but it's funny because this is kind of hitting home with me too. When my daughter Nora was born, um, so second daughter,
Hmm.
um, I really struggled after that. And I'm a pharmacist. I'm averse to taking medication sometimes too, right? Which is weird. But finally, it kind of reached a bit of a breaking point. Like I had such a short fuse,
Yeah.
and it was just having a hard time coping. And it was the same situation. I, finally went and talked to my doctor, and like, what a amazing difference it made for me at the time.
Hmm.
um and I give that same advice to people too. It's come up with my friends sometimes too, and they're like, oh man, I didn't know you were on something, or
Yeah.
yeah, I'm going through that too. And so I think it is super important to talk about and just be open about. Not everybody's solution is going to be the same, but it's interesting,
Yeah.
your experience of what you wanted to share is that it's not going to be kind of a magic bullet right off the bat.
Right.
um, it might be.
Could
And
be.
actually for me, I had a really good experience with the first thing I tried, but I talk about that, or did in the past, sort of talk about that with patients quite a bit too, that like, you just this might not be perfect for you, maybe we
Hmm.
find something different. And there's lots of options out there. So yeah, the key is like, the first step, I think, is if you have that insight that like something's just not right,
Yeah.
I'm not coping here, go talk to somebody about it, because you'd be amazed what a big change it can make in your life.
It's there's a huge stigma attached to it,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of there's a generation out there that thinks that it's us showing weakness,
Yeah,
to
it's
ask for help
bullshit.
in this department. It's such bullshit. What I worry about these days is that so many people are now becoming open about it. What I see on the internet is almost this backlash of, and this happens on Punk Rock Dads actually, um, where, you know, people are kind of re-upping the, oh man, just rub some dirt on it. Get in there. I never needed no medication to get over me and Betty Sue getting divorced. And
Yeah, the pendulum just kind of swinging
yeah,
back or something. Yeah.
but I think it's important for everybody to note that with every passing day, there's more and more people out there who are are having these experiences and who are getting help for it. And so there's just so much support out there.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, like just how many people will be sympathetic, empathetic to your situation, and to have some sort of experience with it. And here's the other thing that you have to say, that I need to say too, and this is talking really to the people who haven't experienced these feelings. Just because you haven't experienced it, it doesn't mean that it's not real. So be a good listener, be a good friend.
Yeah.
That's what you can do to help. Because if someone's never stubbed their toe, I couldn't go, well, here's how a stubbed toe feels, and you
Right.
know exactly what it is. You don't know what this, and so I don't know. I can't tell you, or like, and it's even hard, honestly, as a partner, because my wife has anxiety as well. And I found, many, many years ago that I was great about talking about my own stuff, but when she was talking about her stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to solve it. And I'm just like, well, what's wrong with you? What could it possibly be? Like, why would you possibly be anxious?
Yeah.
And she would. It took several times of her going, "Do I ask you that?"
Yeah.
Like, okay, no, well, okay, all right, well, and I think that's the thing is like when you're like, man, I'm having some pretty bad anxiety today. Someone without anxiety is like, well, what's wrong with you? What happened? And
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily have to be anything. That's normally your doctor will ask, do you notice things that trigger this? But
Yeah.
not, it's not like you wake up and you go, oh, I'm worried about this exact thing right here. And if I could just solve that, this would go away. And unfortunately, that's not what happens.
Well, that's the trick with it, right? Is it's so
Yep.
hard to explain why you feel the way you do. And so it
Yep.
does, take kind of working through some of that stuff. So
It does. Yeah, man. It's, but again, so many more outlets out there and,
mhm.
and groups and ways to talk about it. And I think you find way more sympathetic ears these days than you do, opinions that are attached to the stigma of things.
Right.
But yeah, I work a lot with Foundation 45, which is here in Dallas, um, which is a musicians group of musicians that with mental stuff going on, and then
Oh, that's cool.
Punk Rock Saves Lives.
Yeah.
I'm big involved in that, and
They're
not
amazing.
only do we do bone marrow, um, swabbing and trying to find people to give bone marrow, but also mental health is a big part of what we do too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool. I think yeah, you're right. There's lots of resources out there. There's more people talking about it. Sometimes it's just a matter of, yeah, taking that first step to reach out and say something too.
Yeah,
Right. And
100.
look,
That's the biggest thing. I mean,
yeah.
I get the Facebook messages, Instagram messages every week. Like, what do I do? I heard you talking about this, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
going crazy. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, you just took the first step. You did it.
Yep.
Like you're already doing something for yourself just by reaching out and saying, hey. And so then I go, okay, go. You need to find some sunshine. Go get a walk. Drink lots of water, and you need to make an appointment with your doctor. And if you don't have any friends, get one. And
Yeah.
you need to start talking and
Yeah.
getting rid of this stuff.
Well, Punk Rock Dads is a good example of that too. There's lots of guys,
Mhm.
right, who go on there and maybe they don't have somebody to
Yeah.
talk to face to face. They feel more comfortable in that community reaching out. And so you do see some really cool conversation on there too. Good
Yeah, I
support.
think that's when that group is at its finest, is
Yeah.
when someone is, hurting or whatever, and we're not arguing about, you know, whether pop punk is any good or not. Like it's that group is at its best when someone is like, I'm at the end of my rope and I don't really know what to do, and I miss my kids, and my ex-wife's got a new boyfriend, and I feel so alone. And that's when you really see dudes stepping up and going, look, here's, the thing, this is life, and, take some deep breaths, and, you know, you're going to get past this,
Yeah.
first things first, put the kids first and then put you next.
Yeah. There you go. Um, so kind of reflecting back on your journey as a parent, let's kind of shift gears maybe a little bit. And I do, again, just want to thank you for, being open about that stuff.
Yeah,
Cause
man.
like I said, I think it's super important.
It is.
Um,
Yeah, very important.
yeah. But like reflecting back, what are some of the most rewarding things about being a parent, being a dad?
Hmm. Um, Man, to me, it's sort of like this endless supply. It's funny, you find yourself, um, you know, reflecting back on that as your kids hit milestones. And my
Yeah.
daughter again turning 19, my son turning 16. My little guy is about to be a black belt, and it just
Oh,
there's so
cool.
many crazy things going on. But just seeing yourself in them, whether it's nature or nurture, and seeing them do good things and make good decisions, and you know, I, I love it because it's a constant thing for me. But anytime people are around my kids, they will just come up to me and they will go, "My God, your kid is like can sit and have a conversation with people, like with adults. And they've always been like that. They're treated like that. They're and my daughter is me, and becoming more me with every passing day. It's bizarre because she used to be exactly like her mom, but she is becoming her dad. And you know, I watch her work a room, and it is unbelievable, man. It's She came to one of our shows recently, and she came backstage, and man, she had that whole dressing room in the palm of her hand, and I'm just like, my God, it's so cool that you can do that, like, 'cause that's a gift I was given too. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's, there's those times when, when my daughter will talk to me about something that's going on in a relationship that she's in or something. It feels really
Yeah.
good because I wouldn't have done that at 19. So I
Yeah.
think in that point you're like, okay, I'm doing something right, or you know our youngest son is real good about just talking to us about how he feels about things and stuff, and that feels really good, like we've done something
Well,
correctly.
there's a trust there. Like it shows
Yeah.
that they trust you and they know they're not going to kind of be
Yeah.
judged.
100%. And and that's something that you set out to do, but when you those things, when you feel that sense of accomplishment, you say, oh my God, like this, my child is actually talking to me, like,
Yeah.
and I may not lose them,
Yeah.
um, but I like the little instant gratification rewards too, like my oldest son, you know he this is a pretty good story. My oldest son was in an indoor soccer league, and he was in the championship, and they tied. It came down to penalties,
Yeah.
and he was the last one. That the other team had just missed one, so if he made it, they won, and if not, they had to start a new round.
Yeah.
And he made it, and I was
Oh,
just like,
awesome.
that's that pressure that you just don't want. I'm like, oh my God, why does it got to be my kid? He made it or
Yeah.
whatever. And we're walking out of there, and my ex-wife and my wife and my daughter are walking behind us, and my daughter goes, "Dad, are you crying?" And my ex-wife and my wife at the same time went, "Of course he is."
Yeah.
But there's just things like that where I just never forget how that feels. Just seeing them do good things, and just the happiness in their eyes, and
Oh yeah, it's so amazing.
amazing.
Yeah, see, like kind of like almost like living vicariously through them a little bit, or I don't know
Yeah,
what it is, but
yeah. It's
yeah.
it's I definitely, you know I don't ever want them to do anything they don't want to do, and that's a cool thing about where Emma is in her life, because she's like, I don't know if I want to go to college. She's going to junior college and working right now. She goes, I don't know if I want to go to real college. And I'm just like, well, then don't, And I
Yeah.
wish my parents would have been like that, but I'm like, you can decide what you want to do at 36. You can decide what you want to do at 44. It doesn't matter. As long as you're being a good human being,
Yeah.
and not being a piece of shit, then just live your life and enjoy it, because life's too short for there to be rules like that of like, okay, what's the syllabus here? What do I do now? Well, you can decide that.
Yeah,
You
and the
want to go work?
possibilities are too big too. Like
Yeah,
when I finished high school, I thought there was only one path forward, and that was just go to university, and like that's worked out
yeah,
great for me. But I thought that was it.
yeah.
And I had
Well,
friends who went
that's what my
traveling,
parents.
and
Yeah, my
yeah,
parents said that, and then I go to school for 4 years, get 2 degrees, and then I was sick of being responsible all the time. So I was like, I'm just going to go be in a rock band for a while, and here we are.
yeah. Well, hey, that worked out good for you too.
It worked out fine.
Are your kids, are they into music? Like, what do they think about what you do?
They like music. My two older kids can both sing really well,
Oh, cool.
but they don't. Um, they've Jack has dabbled in some things. He took drum lessons for a while. He just not really ever um, found what he wants to do. Really, he's played every sport, and he just kind of likes to dabble in everything. My youngest though takes piano, and he takes drums, and everything just sort of comes to him instinctually. So
Oh, that's cool.
and he can sing really, really well already. And so I think he's probably going to be at least if not a musician, the one that, sticks with it and plays an instrument and does all that. But, again, whatever. I mean, it's funny. I think there's probably a time within my career where I would have been like, the last thing I want is for my kids to do this, because it's not easy. It's hard.
Right.
But nothing in life is easy. So now, and obviously this has been like this for a while now. If it doesn't matter what my kids want to do, my son, Jack, decided one day he was like, I'm going to be a gamer. Okay, well then practice games, because
Yeah.
I've seen how many hours they put into that. So you better get to work. Well, then he wanted to be a YouTuber, and so I set up a little corner in his room, and I blacked out the walls and like had him a cool chair there, and like got
Nice.
him some lighting, whatever. And like, hey, you want to be a YouTuber? Be a YouTuber. That just lasted a couple of days, but what I've tried to show him is that it doesn't matter what he wants to do. Like he just do it, because, and Gary and I talk a lot about this on Rockstar Dad Show all the time. We're the last guys in the world that can ever tell our kids that they can't do something, because what we do for a living is something that literally every person in the world at one point or another dreams about.
Right. For sure.
And and I don't mean like harps on it or for years wants to do it or whatever, but at one point or another, you pretend or you think about, man, it'd be cool to be a rock star, right? And we are.
Totally.
And
I mean, it's like a cliche thing that, people say, like, oh man, live the rock star life or whatever.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. 100%. And yeah, I don't know if you saw my post, but the Rockstar Life yesterday was putting together a puzzle, and I was very much enjoying it. And
yeah, I mean, that's
I might work on it for a while after this interview. I don't know. I don't know when I'm
yeah, I mean, it is funny, and it's a unique experience for sure. I love your guys' show, so I watch your show and listen to your show too. And I just think, yeah, I just love kind of the experience of hearing what other dads are going through.
Yeah.
And so I think kind of what kind of connects those two things is like, that is such a shared experience between parents, right? Like we all kind of go through a lot of the same things. It's just the environment in which you're kind of going through those things, and so you can learn new techniques from people who've had to adapt in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think about you, like having to manage going out on tour.
Yeah.
I guess there's lots of people who have jobs where they might be away from their families for a little while, and so maybe they haven't had anybody to tell them, well, here's something that works.
Right. Yeah, we talk about that all the time. It's you never want to compare yourself to what somebody's experience is. That where but it's like I say all the time. It's like, I mean, yeah, we're gone some, but there's a couple of ways to look at it. We could be in the oil field and be gone for months at a time, and or we could be in the army and be gone for years at a time. But there's other things too that aren't quite like that like people don't think about. I mean, for a big part of my life, my dad sold cars. Well, he worked 9 to 9 every day. That means I literally never saw the guy. Never. Like, because I mean, I would be gone to school by the time he'd be going to work, and then by the time he came home from work, it's like we were done with the day. It was over. And then he was off on Sundays, but that's kind of when they did their own thing. And so, that's something that, when I started traveling, I had to make sure that I was putting that in perspective of like, you know what? If I'm gone during this time, when I'm home, I'm going to be home, and I'm going to be present, and I'm going to be there when they get off the bus, or I'm going to be at their games. I'm going to be at their recitals, at their karate belt tests, and so
so that was kind of a conscious thing. Like, were you actively kind of like reflecting on your experience as a kid, as you're kind of thinking about how to approach those situations?
I think everybody wants to do better than their parents did. And I don't think everybody has the same story. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that think their parents were perfect, but still want to do better.
Mm-hmm.
I personally, my parents weren't amazing communicators. And so I try to be, I try to show patience where I don't feel like there was patience in the house that I grew up in, in those areas. I try to be more conscious of that. Like I really can really sense that. And when I do make a mistake as a parent, I'm quick to point it out.
Yeah.
And sometimes my wife will be like, "Man, you got irritated there or whatever," and I go, "Oh, I know. I'm already over here punishing myself. Like, I'm like, I gotta be mindful of that. So yeah, I think that we all do that. Just try to be better. What we do that anyway, right? Like we try to be better musicians than the guys before us, or
Yeah.
funnier songwriters or whatever. And that's just progress.
So that's a good segue. Let's talk about, I mean, we talked about you're a busy guy in general. You got a lot going on right now. So new Bowling for Soup album coming. You have a new
Yeah.
solo album. Tell us about that too. Like, let's hear all about it.
All right. Yeah. So, well, first up, Bowling for Soup just released a new single called "I Want to Be Brad Pitt." That
It's
just
great.
came out. Thank you. My solo record comes out March 11th, and it is a country album, but not country to the point of like where people are like everybody at Punk Rock Dads is gonna hate it. It's got enough social distortion in it to where I
Yeah.
think people will dig it. I grew up listening to Waylon and Willie, and they'll always be
Yeah.
cool. That's Willie's as punk as you can get. And then Bowling for Soup new album comes out April 22nd, and then we're doing some touring and stuff, and so yeah, it's a good time. It's a busy time.
And you're like, I kind of seem to remember you guys talking about on your show that like this Bowling for Soup album was not really, you weren't planning this album.
Oh
It sort
yeah,
of almost just happened, right?
oh yeah, it did. Yeah, it's basically first 6 months of quarantine. We had our guitar player literally locked in a one room apartment, and
Mm-hmm.
the rest of us locked in our houses, and we started doing all these Facebook hangouts. Essentially, we'd just go on Facebook and get drunk, and people could just watch us, and we had a blast, and it was super fun. But there just came a time where I'm just like, man, I miss you guys, and I think we just needed to do it. And so that's been a year and a half ago. That was last August. We jumped in a tour bus. We all COVID tested. We jumped in a tour bus. So we went to the Poconos. We rented an Airbnb and a studio right beside it, and made an album. And you know, I, this I keep saying this. I don't know. This might be the last one we do, because really we live in a singles world now. I mean, the
Yeah.
idea
Yeah.
is to keep putting out singles, albums. For musicians, the way that content works now is like you put out an album, you've really just kind of wasted 10 songs. Um, and so, I don't know what the future holds, but I'm glad we did this one because it came out amazing, and I'm super, super happy with it. And everybody that hears it is just like, holy crap. Um, but really, I'm glad that we did it more for just the camaraderie. I mean, we did it at a time when sports had just came back, so it was crazy. Actually, we're in this Airbnb, and all four major sports were going on at the same time
Yeah.
because football had started, baseball was still going, basketball had a shortened season, hockey had a shortened season. Hockey was in the playoffs actually, when we were doing this. So, it was awesome. We cooked our own food, and just lived, and made a great record. And so, yeah, I'm happy for the world to finally hear it, man. It seems like a lifetime ago, obviously, with the way the world has been.
Oh, it's
Um,
crazy. Yeah. Well,
but
I'm super excited that the single's great.
thank you,
And
man.
yeah, and your country album. So has that been in the works for quite a while?
Well, country album is another COVID-y thing.
Mm.
Something I've been talking about for a long time. I grew up in Wichita Falls, Texas. I grew up listening to whatever my parents listened to, which was, like I said, Waylon and Willie and Kenny
Yeah.
Rogers and Dolly Parton. And so that's something that I just started to kind of get back into listening to again when I met my wife. Is just is back to listening to country. And I've always said, man, I could make a country record. I should do this. And so I had been talking about it with my friend Zach Malloy, who's in a band called the Nixons, who has written and produced a bunch of big country hits now. And he's in Nashville. And we just kept, I kept going, man, I really want to do this. Like, let's try to set aside the time. Let's try to do it. And finally, last like February, I think it was, we were just texting. He goes, "We're just gonna do this. Let's just do it." And I just was like, "Okay, let's just do." So we wrote and recorded that album, and over the internet. Wrote it and demoed it over the internet, and then we had some musicians come in Nashville and play it, and I went there and sang it, and we got it done. And so, yeah, a year later, it's coming out, and
And you had some friends play on it too, right?
I did. Yeah, I had so Uncle Cracker, who I've known for a long time, who has done a bunch of stuff in the country world, is on there. Also, I'm a huge Frank Turner fan, and have gotten to be friendly with him, so he's on there. And then from the
Awesome.
country world, Cody Canada is on there. But for you and I, the most exciting person is. I didn't know who my biological father was till about 4 or 5 years ago, and when I found out
Oh, interesting.
he was a musician, and he was a radio station personality, and a lot of similarities in how he deals with people as me. There's definitely some nature going on there. Um, but he would write and record music back in the day. So I got
It's
sent a
crazy.
song called Natalie that he did when he was 19 back in 1959, and I was just like, man, I think I could record this because it's kind of a rockabilly song. So I did. I recorded it for my new country album, and then I asked Stephen Edgerton from The Descendants to play guitar on it, and he does. And then, what to make it even crazier, his wife's name is Natalie, and
Yeah,
so
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I've known him for a really really long time, and
Oh, that's a neat
you know
connection. Yeah.
Oh, my connection with him is the wackiest thing in the world. Like I go see the Descendants and I cry because like I just get overwhelmed with emotional. Like I'm just like that. It like plays, musicals, like concerts or whatever. There's always a point where I just can't help it. Like I just come overwhelmed. And and then so I go see the Descendants, and then he goes, "Hey, can we come out and take some pictures?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And what it was is his kids wanted to come take pictures with me, and I'm like, "Do you have any idea like how weird it is
Yeah,
that
full circle.
I'm telling his kids like this is so weird for me that you're wanting my picture. Like I met your dad, and I'm just like I still am freaked out by the fact that I'm friends with him. So
That's so
yeah,
cool.
life is a funny thing. My wife says that my life is weird at least twice a day, and most of the time it's because of something like that.
Well, that is an amazing story about your biological dad too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and you said you just found out 5 years ago.
yeah. About 4 or 5 years ago, and actually, my biological sisters found me on the internet after he passed. After their mom passed away, they got some insight into things, and I had known that I'd been pretty close to finding him back in like 2013, but it's for the best that I didn't because the story is way too crazy to go into. But the truth, but what's awesome is I'm really really close with my sisters now and their families, and they're all
Oh man,
awesome, and
that's amazing.
I get to see pictures of him. That there's a picture of him when he was 11. That if you set it next to my son's school picture from when he was 11, you can't tell the difference between the two kids. It is
Oh man.
bizarre.
Man, that is just so crazy and it's so neat to have that musical connection
Yeah,
too.
totally. Yeah, for
And
sure.
now kind of like, you know, I don't know what the word is, memorialized or it's kind of
Yeah,
like part of your new album. That's so amazing. That's
yeah.
so
It's a cool
cool.
story for sure. It's definitely one of those things where when I if I tell the story right, people get chills.
Yeah,
I kind of
totally.
rushed through it there, but yeah, it's a cool story, man. It's been wild.
Yeah, well, it sounds like this album release is going to be, yeah, pretty special for you.
For sure. Yeah, I'm
Um,
I'm excited about it. The reception to it has been really good as well. And so I'm hoping that I'm navigating two successful albums over the course of the next year or two, and that I can just keep doing what I'm doing.
so where's the best place for people to kind of follow what's happening with your albums, follow you, follow the podcasts?
Yeah, JaretReddick.com, JaretReddick.com has everything on there. There'll be a link to my country record coming soon. That has all my podcasts, all my bands, all the stuff. But I'm on TikTok at Jaret Reddick, and then everywhere else, Jaret 2113. So that's my Instagram, my Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff. And I'm pretty active. So yeah, if you want to know what's going on, or if you want to reach out to me, I'm pretty easy to find.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to, if somebody's struggling with some mental health stuff or whatever, or you just want to tell me how bad pop punk sucks or whatever, that's where you find me.
Sweet. Dude, I really appreciate your time. It's been awesome talking with you. Thanks for sharing, some real personal
Yeah, man.
stories with us. I really appreciate it. We really appreciate it. I think it's an important thing, like we talked about. And yeah, it's just been great chatting with you and getting to know you. I appreciate your support and
Thanks, man.
coming on the show. Yeah.
Yeah, if I could plug actually Rockstar Dad Show specifically on here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All you dads out there, just check out wherever you get podcasts, Rockstar Dad Show. Our last episode, we had a club owner from here who is now a promoter. He promotes all of Snoop Dogg and Nelly's shows now. But 2 years ago, his entire life was in the toilet, and the way that he's turned it around is crazy. It's really inspirational. So that's on our last episode. So everybody should go check that out. But you can go in there and pick and choose too, just musicians that you dig. I mean, we've had everybody on. Stefan's been on, so go check that out.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. We'll put links up to everything in our posts and all that stuff too. I'm sure people know where to find you, but yeah, like I said, thanks for taking the time. Really, really appreciate it. And hopefully everything goes great with the album releases. I didn't ask, but you guys have any plans to come up to Canada at all?
We were planning on that actually before the COVID thing hit, and then obviously that got dissolved. So we'll see if we can't restart that engine now that things are getting slowly back to normal.
Cool. Well, love to buy you a beer sometime, so maybe we'll bump into each other at some point.
We'll do it. All right, man.
Awesome. Appreciate your time.
Good talking to you.
Yeah, take care, Jaret.